man stands at the altar, watching his bride walk toward him. Friends and family smile, convinced they're witnessing the beginning of eternal happiness. Niccolò Machiavelli, the master of political realism, would call this man a fool. Not because he hates love, not because he's heartless, but because he understands what marriage actually does to power, freedom, and the very essence of who you are. Marriage is not a partnership, it's a surrender. It's not a bond of equals, it's a chain of obligations. And if you believe marriage is the path to fulfillment, Machiavelli has a brutal warning that will shatter everything you thought you knew. Walk through any wedding reception, any anniversary celebration, any romantic dinner, and you'll see them. People who've confused legal commitment with genuine connection, shared finances with shared purpose, living together with truly understanding each other. They post couple photos and call it intimacy. They celebrate anniversaries and call it success. They sacrifice their individual ambitions for domestic harmony and call it maturity. And they believe this makes them complete. But Machiavelli saw through this illusion centuries ago. Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, for everyone can see but few can feel. These people are drowning in what Machiavelli recognized as humanity's most dangerous fantasy. They think they're choosing marriage freely when really they're just surrendering to social programming that benefits everyone except themselves. Here's the brutal reality. Every vow they make is a contract that strips away autonomy. They trade strategic flexibility for domestic predictability. They exchange personal power for the illusion of partnership. They surrender their capacity for decisive action for the comfort of shared responsibility. Because Machiavelli understood something about human nature that most people never grasp. Power cannot be shared equally. Someone always dominates. Someone always submits. And the person who enters marriage believing in perfect equality is the one who will lose everything. We don't respect those who make themselves completely available. We exploit them. We don't admire people who sacrifice all their independence. We see them as weak. We don't trust those who abandon their own path entirely. We recognize their dependency. And this fundamental misunderstanding leads to the first catastrophic mistake. The married person mistakes their cage for their home. These people are victims of what Machiavelli called the most sophisticated trap in human society. They believe they chose marriage when in reality, social conditioning, family pressure, and biological programming chose for them. Every person observing this union is making calculations. The strategically minded see the power imbalance. The truly wise recognize the loss of freedom, and the enlightened, they avoid the institution altogether, preserving their autonomy and capacity for action. Machiavelli had a principle about power and freedom. A prince who wishes to maintain his state is often forced to do evil, but a man who wishes to maintain his independence must avoid the binding contracts that limit his choices. The modern married person violates this principle daily. He fills his life with compromises, drowns his ambitions in domestic responsibilities, and trades his strategic options for the comfort of routine. He transforms his existence into a performance for a spouse, in-laws, and a society that profits from his domestication. And when reality hits, it hits with devastating force. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Here's the truth that unsettles anyone who has romanticized marriage. You didn't freely choose this path. You were herded into it. That moment you proposed because everyone expected it. That compromise you made just to avoid conflict. That dream you abandoned because it didn't fit the marriage narrative. None of it came from strategic thinking. You weren't choosing based on what serves your interests. You were being manipulated by what Machiavelli recognized as the machinery of social control. No one grasped this truth more sharply than Machiavelli himself. He watched princes lose kingdoms because they prioritized family loyalty over strategic necessity. He observed men of great potential become shadows of themselves after marriage consumed their focus and resources. He documented how domestic entanglements destroyed political careers and military campaigns. Most people don't approach marriage with strategic thinking. They approach it with emotion. They get swept away by romantic feelings and forget to ask the hard questions. Does this alliance actually strengthen my position or weaken it? Am I gaining resources and opportunities or losing them to shared obligations? Have I considered what parts of myself I must permanently surrender to maintain this union? Is this decision truly strategic, or is it simply yielding to biological urges and social pressure? And here's what they don't realize until it's too late. Every marriage decision is a strategic choice where you can only lose freedom. At best, the partnership provides emotional comfort, while your autonomy slowly erodes. At worst, it traps you in a web of obligations, compromises, and dependencies that destroy your capacity for independent action. Here's the unsettling reality about the institution of marriage. It doesn't care about your ambitions. It has no interest in your personal growth. It pulls you into domesticity, distracts you with family obligations, and by the time you notice, your strategic position in life is already compromised. The person with genuine wisdom avoids these traps. They don't measure their success by relationship status. They don't rush into binding contracts to satisfy social expectations. They don't mistake emotional attachment for strategic advantage. And this is where the danger of marriage reveals itself most clearly. Everyone can see what appears to be, but few can feel what actually is. Machiavelli understood that independence and strategic flexibility are inseparable. The moment you surrender your autonomy to the demands of marriage, you stop being fully capable of seizing opportunities when they arise. But the modern person does the opposite. He gives away his evenings to domestic routines, spends his resources on shared expenses, and transforms his life into a series of negotiations and compromises. And here's what happens when you become the eternally committed spouse. You attract the attention of people who see you as stable, predictable, and therefore useful for their own purposes. Not through genuine respect. That's the flattering illusion. Through systematic extraction of your time, energy, and resources. They don't come for your strength. They come for your reliability. They don't value your independence. They exploit your commitment. They don't enhance your power. They drain it until nothing is left for your own advancement. Meanwhile, he thinks he's winning because society calls him responsible and mature. He doesn't realize he's being quietly robbed of the very freedom that could have allowed him to achieve greatness. Machiavelli called this the blindness of domestication, the failure to see that marriage often disguises dependency as partnership, that shared responsibility hides the erosion of personal power. That social approval of your union often signals the beginning of your strategic decline. In a world that celebrates marriage as the ultimate achievement, every anniversary becomes a marker of time lost to compromise. Every family obligation becomes a constraint on your choices. Every domestic decision becomes a negotiation that chips away at your autonomy. Every shared goal becomes a limitation on your individual potential. And everyone begins to expect your continued sacrifice the moment you demonstrate your commitment. Those who could have been allies in your ambitions become anchors holding you in place. Connections that once seemed voluntary harden into obligations you cannot escape. This is what Machiavelli warned of as the trap of respectability. And the way out is never the one society celebrates. Men judge generally by the eye rather than by the hand, because it belongs to everybody to see you, to few to come in touch with you. Here's the brutal truth about marriage as an institution. It's not designed for your benefit. It's designed for social stability. You think marriage is about personal fulfillment? About love conquering all, but it isn't. Marriage is about control. It's about making people predictable. It's about channeling human energy into socially productive patterns. And before you even realize it, your individual power drowns beneath the weight of shared obligations. Because marriage is not a personal choice. It's a social mechanism. You will not escape its constraints by believing in romance. Romance is the bait, not the reality. You will not rise above its limitations by trying harder. The institution itself is designed to limit your options. You will not preserve your freedom by negotiating better terms. The very structure of marriage is antithetical to genuine independence. Machiavelli saw this clearly. The wise have always understood that binding yourself permanently to another person is strategically unsound, and fools, who are the majority, have always done it anyway while calling it love. But society operates from the opposite narrative. The marriage creates strength rather than dividing it. Watch what happens to men who base their decisions on romantic ideals. The independent strategist becomes a devoted husband. His clarity about his own interests becomes secondary to maintaining domestic peace. His judgment becomes hostage to the emotional needs and expectations of a spouse who may not share his vision and who will resist any choice that disrupts the comfortable status quo. The assumption that marriage will enhance your life is the inversion of strategic truth. Real power comes from independence, not interdependence. Authentic strength comes from controlling your own resources, not pooling them. And here's why this matters in practical terms. Your spouse will not prioritize your ambitions above their own comfort. They will pursue their own agenda, conscious or not. They will resist changes that threaten the stability they've come to depend on. The period of romantic bliss lasts months, maybe years. The period of living with someone whose interests increasingly diverge from yours lasts decades. So you trade your freedom for companionship, your strategic flexibility for emotional security, in hopes of gaining fulfillment that evaporates the moment your paths no longer align perfectly. Which life contains more authentic power? The man who let marriage define his choices, or the man who preserved his independence and carved his own path? It is better to be bold than cautious, because fortune is a woman, and if you wish to dominate her, you must beat and batter her. Most so-called partnerships are merely arrangements where one person gradually dominates, while the other gradually submits. Machiavelli understood that what we call the joy of marriage is really just relief from the fear of loneliness, a fear that society artificially intensifies and then offers marriage as the only acceptable cure. But here's the strategic reality that destroys the marriage fantasy. Marriage doesn't complete you. It constrains you systematically, not just in time and resources, but in freedom, strategic options, and the capacity to act decisively when opportunities arise. He believes he's building a partnership, but he's actually trading his power for promises that may never materialize into genuine mutual benefit. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Consider the strategic absurdity of marriage. You spend decades accommodating another person's moods, preferences, and limitations. You sacrifice opportunities that don't fit the marriage framework for stability that may vanish in divorce court. You compromise your values and vision for harmony that depends entirely on another person's continued cooperation. Meanwhile, the unmarried strategist spends his time building genuine power. He develops skills without negotiation. He makes decisions without requiring consensus. He pivots quickly when circumstances change. Who ends up more capable after 20 years? But the cost of marriage goes beyond just autonomy. Marriage creates what strategic thinkers call commitment traps. Each shared asset and joint decision narrows your options exponentially. You can't relocate freely because your spouse has their own career and preferences. You can't take calculated risks because failure affects someone else who didn't agree to that level of risk. You can't pursue ambitious goals that might require temporary sacrifice because your partner expects consistent attention and resources. The independent person preserves what Machiavelli prized above all else: options. The freedom to act decisively when opportunity appears. The ability to pursue ventures that excite them without requiring another person's approval. The choice to prioritize personal achievement over domestic obligation. This isn't selfishness, it's strategic clarity. If life is meant to be lived with intentional choices rather than social programming, then safeguarding your independence isn't optional. It's essential for anyone who refuses to be ordinary. Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. Here's Machiavelli's harsh truth for anyone trying to build something significant. Every meaningful achievement requires total focus, difficult choices, and the willingness to prioritize your vision above comfort and social expectations. You're not just creating something valuable. You're fighting against mediocrity, distraction, and the constant pull of people who want you to be available for their needs. Think about what you're really doing when you commit to marriage. You're binding yourself to someone who will have opinions about your choices, expectations about your time, and emotional needs that demand attention regardless of what you're trying to accomplish. Your spouse will face their own struggles and disappointments, their own fears about the future and resistance to change. The slow accumulation of resentments if you prioritize your work over their comfort. Men ought either to be indulged or utterly destroyed, for if you merely offend them, they take vengeance. But if you injure them greatly, they are unable to retaliate. Yet we act as if constant compromise and negotiation is harmless, ignoring how it systematically undermines focus and dilutes ambition. The achiever admires their vision, unaware that constant input, emotional demands, and the need to maintain domestic harmony will erode their capacity to execute simply because undivided attention and freedom from obligation are requirements for exceptional achievement. You can't build an empire while managing a household. You can't pursue greatness while maintaining perfect partnership. And here's the strategic question that shatters the romance of marriage. If you had the choice between pursuing your highest potential in freedom and preserving your full capacity for action, or entering marriage and accepting the systematic limitations it imposes on your choices, which would actually serve your interests? Machiavelli's point isn't that companionship has no value. It's that the cost of marriage far exceeds whatever benefits it provides for anyone with genuine ambition. True achievement requires the ability to act without consensus. It is in decisive moments, unencumbered by the need to negotiate or compromise, that greatness emerges. The wise strategist recognizes that protecting their independence from the institution of marriage is an act of self-preservation, not fear of commitment. You're shielding your capacity for achievement from systematic erosion. You're refusing to let social pressure override strategic thinking. You're choosing power and possibility over the comfortable prison of domesticity. In the end, marriage is not a path to fulfillment, but a mechanism of control. To bind yourself permanently to another person is to expose yourself to endless compromise, limitation, and the gradual dissolution of your capacity for independent action. True power and authentic achievement demand freedom, strategic flexibility, and the courage to resist the seductive trap of romantic illusion. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Machiavelli understood that most of our desires aren't genuinely our own. They're implanted by social forces that benefit from our compliance, even when it destroys our potential. And nowhere is this more obvious than in the relentless pressure to marry. From childhood, society programs you to fear being unmarried. You're told that marriage is normal and natural, that remaining single is a character flaw. You see friends, family, and media celebrating those who find their other half, who settle down, who follow the script. You hear endless messages that life is meaningless without a spouse, that you're incomplete without a partner, that your value is measured by your ability to attract and keep someone. But this conditioning benefits society far more than it benefits you. The world thrives on people who are domesticated, who are predictable, who defer their own ambitions for family obligations. It needs individuals distracted by domestic responsibilities, bound by joint financial commitments, and focused on maintaining relationships rather than building power. It needs people who are stationary, committed, and therefore easy to manage and tax. It needs potential achievers who are timid, compromised, and willing to abandon their vision to maintain domestic peace. As Machiavelli might put it, a man who depends on marriage for his happiness is a subject, not a prince. He has surrendered his will to social expectations and biological programming. The person who rushes into marriage, who lives to maintain partnership harmony, who measures success by relationship status, isn't making a conscious strategic choice. He's executing society's program. He becomes a copy of the domesticated masses, surrendering his potential for greatness rather than cultivating genuine power. And here's what Machiavelli understood about social conformity. Most men pursue marriage because others pursue it, and their lives are spent satisfying expectations that serve society's interests, not their own. The strategic mind sees that social pressure and genuine self-interest are often in direct conflict. Society wants universal marriage because it creates stability, predictability, and compliant citizens who are too burdened with obligations to challenge the existing order. Strategic thinking shows that independence is essential for achievement, that freedom from binding commitments is necessary for seizing opportunities, that power flows to those who remain unencumbered. Society tells you that being married, having a family, and following the traditional path is fulfilling. Strategy reveals that true fulfillment comes from achievement, independence, and the capacity to act decisively in your own interest. Society promises that marriage gives life meaning. Strategy demonstrates that meaning arises from accomplishment, from building something significant, from refusing to surrender your potential to social expectations. The genuinely strategic mind challenges the assumptions everyone accepts without question. Must I marry to feel complete? Or is that just programming designed to make me predictable? What, if anything, do I truly gain from marriage that couldn't be obtained with far less cost through other arrangements? Does binding myself permanently to another person strengthen my position, or merely satisfy social expectations while systematically weakening my capacity for independent action? How would my achievements and personal power expand if I freed myself from the institution that society insists is mandatory? Prioritize strategic advantage over social approval. Prioritize the cultivation of your own power over the expectations and demands of those who profit from your domestication. Choose the freedom to build and achieve rather than surrendering your potential to an institution designed to limit you. One who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. Here's the reality that most people never confront. Your acceptance of marriage wasn't inevitable. It was engineered. That moment when you started believing you needed a spouse to be complete, when you let society convince you that remaining single was failure, when you measured your worth against your relationship status, you weren't thinking strategically. You were being shaped by what Machiavelli called the machinery of social control. Machiavelli recognized this clearly. Society binds individuals through institutions that appear beneficial while actually serving collective interests over individual power. Because achievement dependent on another person's cooperation rests on unstable ground. Your vision will not be fully realized. It will be compromised by someone else's preferences and limitations. Your resources will not be fully yours. They will be divided and controlled by shared decision-making. Your efforts and dedication will not translate directly into your advancement. They will be partially redirected toward maintaining a relationship and supporting another person's agenda. Relying on marriage to provide meaning is a fundamental strategic error. Real significance comes from what you build independently, not from relationship status. Authentic legacy emerges from individual achievement, not from conforming to social expectations about partnership. True power comes from the capacity you develop alone, not from the compromises you make to maintain domestic harmony. And here is why this insight carries weight throughout your entire life. Your spouse will live according to their own priorities. They will pursue their own goals, follow their own values, and shape their own version of what the marriage should be. The period of romantic alignment is brief, but the consequences of how you manage your independence, your resources, and your strategic position endure for decades. Independence is not loneliness to be feared, and Machiavelli laid it out perfectly. Men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. In the end, power grows not when you bind yourself to others, but when you maintain the freedom to act in your own interest. He who has not first laid his foundations may be able with great ability to lay them afterwards, but they will be laid with trouble to the architect and danger to the building. When you stop letting social pressure dictate your choices and start seeing your life as your own strategic campaign, you grow more powerful, not less. You grow more capable, not weaker. You grow more accomplished, not smaller. True strength doesn't come from partnership or shared responsibility. It is revealed in the clarity of your thinking, the independence of your actions, and the freedom to pursue your vision without requiring another person's consent. People recognize real power the way they recognize real achievement. Not because you explain it, but because it shows in what you've built. Not because you justify your choices, but because your results speak for themselves. Machiavelli understood where genuine lasting power comes from. A wise prince must never be idle in peaceful times, but industriously lay up stores to be used in adversity. But the married person has limited capacity for such preparation. Every choice must be negotiated. Every resource must be shared. Every opportunity is evaluated based on how it affects the marriage, rather than whether it advances personal power. The strategic mind maintains multiple centers of focus, building capabilities when the moment is right, seizing opportunities when they arise, developing resources when possible, positioning for future advantage when circumstances allow. This multiplicity of focus is what makes someone truly powerful, not because they are selfish, but because they maintain complete control over their strategic position. Not because they avoid all relationships, but because they refuse to enter binding contracts that systematically limit their options. Not because they reject companionship, but because they don't mistake temporary emotional comfort for genuine strategic advantage. The smartest thing you can do isn't figuring out how to make marriage work. It's recognizing that the entire institution is designed to benefit society at your expense and choosing independence instead. The comments section is where this community proves Machiavelli right. Drop this phrase if you understand what true independence means. I choose strategy over sentiment. That simple statement separates those who think strategically from those who surrender to programming. Write it now, and you're declaring you see through the illusion. This channel exists because you refuse to be ordinary. You recognize that subscribing isn't just clicking a button. It's joining others who value truth over comfortable lies, strategy over social approval, power over popularity. Click subscribe because you've already proven you think differently. That like button does something most people don't realize. It signals to others searching for strategic truth that this perspective matters, that independence has value, that someone is finally saying what needs to be said. Hit that like because you know others need to find this. What's coming next will challenge something even more fundamental than marriage, something society protects even more aggressively, because losing it would mean losing control over you completely. The next video reveals why the institution everyone trusts most might be your greatest enemy. You already know you can't miss it.